Ray. What do you want to do tonight?
Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Hey guys, we're excited to announce that the You Are Creators podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy. GoDaddy is an awesome site where you can find the right name for your business. Hundreds of new domain names are available now, including .photography, .estate, and .guru. Create your website with GoDaddy's easy-to-use website builder. Even run your business anytime, anywhere with Microsoft 365 from GoDaddy. Visit GoDaddy.com and enter promo code CREATOR28 to save 28% on your order. Some limitations apply. See website for details.
This is Justin and Erica from YouAreCreators, and we have a special guest, Mr. Howard Storm. Welcome, Mr. Storm.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Okay, so just to give the listeners a little background on who Mr. Storm is, Howard Storm is a former art professor and chairman of the art department at the Northern Kentucky University. Pastor Storm is best known as the author of his book, My Descent into Death, about his near-death experience. Mr. Storm has told his story to many audiences and has appeared on many shows, including The Today Show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, 48 Hours, Coast to Coast AM, and now the You Are Creators podcast. We are so excited to have Mr. Storm here with us today.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Storm, can you please elaborate and give us a little more detail on your background?
I was born in Massachusetts in 1946, raised in a suburb of Boston, spent all my summers on Cape Cod, which was wonderful. And then I went out to San Francisco to do my undergraduate work, University of California. My undergraduate work was at the San Francisco Art Institute, and then I went to University of California, Berkeley, and got my graduate degrees.
Can you tell us just a little bit more about your NDE?
June 1st, 1985, I was taking a group of art students on an art tour of Europe, and we were on the next to the last day of a 3-week tour. We were in Paris, France, and I had a perforation of the small stomach. I was taken by ambulance from the hotel to the emergency room at Cochin Hospital, and they told me that, they knew exactly what was wrong. They x-rayed me and took my medical history and told me that I had to have surgery immediately, that it couldn't even wait 1 hour, and that if we waited too long, it would be critical and I would die. So I was rushed over to the surgical hospital, which was another building, and because it was Saturday, there just so happened there was no surgeon on duty. So when I was taken to the surgical hospital, I didn't see a doctor for 10 hours. The doctors in the United States told me later that my life expectancy was about 5 hours. And the pain was incredible, way beyond anything that I thought I was capable of tolerating. And it just got worse and worse and worse as the digestive juices from my stomach migrated throughout my abdominal cavity, eating me up, literally. And at 8:30 that night, a nurse came into the room and said they were very sorry. They were unable to find a doctor, and they would try and get one the next day, which would have been Sunday, of course. I had been very aware that I was dying for many hours, and doctors in the United States all said it was a miracle that I'd lived as long as I had. And when she told me that there wasn't going to be any doctor that night, and possibly even the next day, I knew it was time to just let the inevitable happen. I was an atheist, and I knew that when you died, and that was it, and there wasn't anything else, and anyone that believed otherwise was just fooling themselves into believing fairy tales that were not based in reality. So I went unconscious, awoke. I was completely bodily intact, and to my delight and surprise, pain-free, and I felt more alive than I ever felt in my entire life. I could see, hear, feel, touch better than I ever could. And I tried to communicate with my wife, and she acted like she was completely unaware of me yelling and screaming at her, which she was. And I was horrified by the body in the bed that I had been in that looked just like me, but I refused to accept what was me because I knew that that body was dead. And I didn't believe I was dead. I thought I was more alive. And I tried to communicate with my roommate, a Frenchman, and he was completely unresponsive to me. And I heard people calling me outside the room by name, and so I went over the doorway of the room. And they said, "Hurry, let's go. We're waiting for you." And I said, "I'm sick. I need to have surgery. I've been waiting for a long time." And they said, "We know all about you. It's time for you to go. Come on, let's go. No time to talk about it." And so I left the room and went with the people into the hallway, which was gray and misty. And they led me on a very long walk through this featureless place that got very subtly darker and darker until finally it was pitch black, and the people that were around me had increased in number to a large mob, and they were getting very hostile. And I said, "I'm not going with you any further." And they started to push and pull, and I fought back as hard as I possibly could. But there was lots of them and one of me, so they defeated me. But in the process, they were not trying to defeat me immediately. They basically were playing with me like a domestic cat plays with a mouse. They scratched and bit and pulled and tore, and they ripped me all apart. And they did lots of horrible things to me. And then I was lying in that place, unable to move. Not only experiencing the physical pain, but what was even harder was the emotional, psychological pain of what had happened to me. When I heard a voice that seemed to come from my chest say, "Pray to God," and I thought, what a stupid idea. I don't believe in God. I don't pray. And the voice said, "Pray to God," and I thought, I don't even know how to pray. I can't even remember how to pray. And the voice said, "Pray to God." And I thought, when I was a kid, we had been taught prayers in Sunday school. And I was trying to remember what those were, and I couldn't remember anything but little bits and pieces of things that I'd memorized. And when I started to mutter them, the people around me who had tormented me became very angry. And they were saying in foul language, "There is no God. Nobody can hear you. And now we're really going to hurt you. You have to stop praying." And I knew that the prayers drove them away from me. So I kept trying to remember phrases that had God in them. And eventually I found myself alone in that place. And that's when I started to think for the first time. And I realized that I was dead and I wasn't in the world. I didn't know where I was, but I wasn't in this world. And that, as I thought about my life and about the people around me, I realized that I had ended up in a place with people that lived lives, basically the kind of life that I'd lived, like selfish, controlling, manipulative life. But in this world, they had nothing going for them except competing, dominating, tormenting each other. So I realized that they had got exactly what they wanted, and I had achieved what I had been after all of my life, which was this place. Wow. And I really didn't want to be there. Right. And I didn't want to be with them, but there was no way out. And I sank into self-pity and despair. And somewhere in that place, my memory brought up a very vivid image of myself sitting in a Sunday school classroom as a child, singing Jesus Loves Me. And as I heard myself singing that song, I felt what I had felt as a child, that there was this really great guy named Jesus who loved me, and that when I was little, I'd pray to him, and he had helped me out and protected me as a kid. And I wanted what I'd had as a child, which was to have a faith, a belief in that.
Right.
And I called out, Jesus, please save me. And when I did that, a little faint light like a star appeared in the darkness, and it got very big and very bright and came over me, and hands and arms came out of the light, reached down and touched me, and when he touched me, all the gore disappeared, and I was whole and intact. And much more importantly, when he touched me, I was filled with his love, which is indescribable, far beyond any kind of love we experience in this world. And he picked me up and held me against him with his arms around me, and I put my arms around him and cried like a baby into his chest. And then we started to lift up out of that place, and I realized we were going faster and faster, and I wanted to look towards the direction that we were going, and when I did, I saw a world of light and felt even more love coming from that world of light. And all of a sudden I had this huge sense of remorse, because now I knew we were headed towards God. That's where God was. And all my adult life I had ridiculed and denied the notion that there was a God. And I thought to myself, he's made a terrible mistake. I don't belong here. And with that, we stopped, and he spoke to me for the first time and said, we don't make mistakes. You do belong here. And then I realized I hadn't said that. I'd only thought that. And I thought, do you know what I'm thinking? And he said, I know everything you think.
That's
And
cool.
I said, I thought, oh, there's a lot of things that I'm not comfortable with you knowing. And he said, I know everything you've ever thought. And he laughed. And when he laughed, it made me feel a little more comfortable, because, of course, I'm trying not to think about the things that I didn't want him to know that I thought about, and he thinks it's really funny, because I'm getting kind of jammed up trying not to think. When you try not to think about something, you start thinking about it, right?
Right,
So
exactly.
it was not good. Anyways, he thought that was all very funny, and he was trying to put me at ease. And we began to converse by whatever I thought. He responded to by speaking into my mind. And then he said that he had some people that he wanted me to meet. And so these other beings surrounded in different kinds of light came and hung in a semicircle around us, because we're just out in space, me holding on to Jesus, Jesus holding on to me. And they said they wanted to show me my life, so they proceeded to go over my life from the beginning in chronological order. And it was it started off fun through my childhood, and then as I went into my adolescence, things started to go sour, because I became more and more withdrawn emotionally from other people, and more driven to achieve and be successful and to be somebody and to dominate people. And I felt their disappointment, their disapproval, and in fact their emotional sadness with what I was doing with my life. So as my life progressed and I became more and more successful, I was actually inflicting emotional pain on them with what I was doing with my life. And it became very evident that what they were interested in my life was how compassionate I had been to other people, which I was becoming less and less compassionate instead of more. And the things that I had achieved in my life, they made it very clear to me were of absolutely no significance whatsoever, the things that I'd striven for. And many times during the life review, I asked them to stop. I didn't want to see anymore, and they made me watch it all. And then when it was over, Jesus said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "I have a million questions." And so I